Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about Wulfrik the Wanderer and his new campaign after the release of patch 7.0 and the Tides of Torment DLC. You start on a boat. You start with 2 Berserker, 1 Marauder Champion, and crucially, a Feral Mammoth, alongside Marauders with Grey Weapons and Marauder Horsemen with Throwing Axes, as well as the Shaman Sorcerer. You do have 1 settlement over here from the beginning in the Trollfjord, though it is not a settlement that matters. And in fact, it is best if you do get rid of that as quickly as possible. Now, the game wants you to attack the Empire army, the New World Colonies army over there that's on sea. But you don't need to do that because you have the ability of launching naval attacks with Wulfrik. It is part of his Lord effects, and you can get these Lord effects even if you confederate them. But regardless, you can just go over here to the Monuments of the Moon and just take over the settlement, and then just colonize it or raise a Chaos Altar. I'd probably recommend going with the Chaos Altar, even though you will not be able to recruit units when you do so. When you take over 1 settlement, it doesn't matter which one it is, but when you take over a settlement, you will get this choice of either leaving Norska or staying with the Trollfjord. I recommend giving Norska. Yes, it is a lot of growth you can get over there for 5 turns, but leaving Norska in general is going to be the better choice, at least from a financial perspective, though one shouldn't ignore the benefits that getting all of that growth can give you. And once you take over a settlement, you can even recruit Ogre mercenaries right here through the camp, the Ogre camp that is located in this situation, in this location. Okay, so that's just the starting choice with Wulfrik. But this is where your journey begins. See, Wulfrik's main mechanic is that whenever he's at sea, he can use the Seafang ability to teleport his army to near a region with a port settlement, provided there are no enemy armies near the destination port settlement. So if you're not at war with the faction, you do have this available. And that is a pretty big thing. In terms of faction effects, he now gains 50% income from raiding to all armies. He does still keep minus 15% for Marauder units upkeep, faction-wide, and a 15 charge bonus for Marauder chariots and Marauder cavalry units. Actually, I think it was supposed to be a Mammoth benefit, but regardless, that's not really the relevant thing. What is relevant is Wulfrik's unique technology, because every Norscan campaign has some unique technology. For Wulfrik is Sail the Impossible Seas, which reduces the cooldown on Seafang teleportation and increases the income from sacking settlements by 50% for him, and only for him. On top of that, at the bottom, you get Seafang's Tribute, which gives you 10% casualty replenishment when in foreign territory and increases plunder from encounters at seas. Now, of course, Trog does have better faction effects, and when you're playing as Wulfrik, you probably will want to go as Slaanesh, because for every Chaos Altar of Slaanesh, you can get 20 growth. The thing about Trog is that Trog has a unique building, even in Chaos Altars, for the Troll Empire that gives you growth, which you don't have access to as Wulfrik. Okay, that's just the baseline situation, but what can you do with Wulfrik? Because there are so many different possibilities when we're talking about him. And for that, I need to go into turn 2 of this camp. So when we look at Seafang's ability, he can travel with all armies within his zone of control to another port settlement. Now, by default, you have all of these settlements over here in Lustria, so that alone gives you a number of choices. But you can also go for Be'lakor, you can go for Norska, if you desire to do so. That alone is a good amount of flexibility. But very importantly, what we can do is go for the Ziggurat of Dawn. You can recruit a Lord at the end of turn 1. That Lord will have movement range, And then you can just send a lord on land and then attack over here with Wulfrik. And this is where things get a bit funny. Because you see, while this battle is not necessarily the easiest one in the world, if you do win it, right here, so in this case just lower difficulty, for instance, but if you do win it, and you're especially playing on a higher difficulty, let's say we sack this element right here, we don't need to take it over, well, what happens is, by defeating the co-leader of Skeggi, you can now form a confederation with Skeggi. And yes, that is a significant benefit in this campaign. So you're getting access to Skeggi very quickly if you so desire. And the nice thing about Skeggi is they have this great hull, which gives you access to Marauder Berserkers and Marauder Champion recruitment. But on top of that, gives you that control, that Lord Recruit rank, casualty replenishment for armies in region. It is not essential that you gain control over Skeggi, and you can always just go for Marauders with two Marauder Champions with great weapons through the regular building, but it does mean that you can start with the tier 2 settlement, and actually an entire province relatively quickly, because next turn you can take Port Reaver from the Stallions. Not really an issue. In fact, you can even lay an ambush over here for the Stallions if you so desire. And keep in mind, you have a lot of money. You can also get a bunch of Marauder Hunters right here, and you can always get Ogre mercenaries over the next couple of turns. So that means any faction that comes against you will have to deal with the wrath of Wulfrik. So you can teleport to any army. In this case, it's a 6-turn cooldown. And while the ogres right here are not showing up for mercenary recruitment because I'm just outside of their zone of control, eventually you'll be able to get man-eaters with ogre pistols, cavalry, giants, etc. You might even desire to give them money or have them join in some of the wars you're in for money, just so they can get more meat that they can use. But eventually they will grow that camp, and that will give you access to higher end ogre mercenaries right here. So 5 turns until man-eaters with ogre pistols, more turns for giants, more infant cavalry, etc. That gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of your roster. And then you can always decide what you're going to do further in this campaign with Wulfrik. You just need vision. Now, in terms of his skill line, he gets replenishment of 10 campaign movement range after winning a battle. He does have Worm Piercer ammunition, improved anti-large for javelin units, very useful for monster hunts. He still has a mammoth or mammoth as a mount. He does have that debuff ability for Hunter of Champions. He gets Discouraged effect. He reduces his upkeep, construction cost, and construction time for provincial capitals. Faction-wide, the upkeep is only for his own army, and then he reduces cooldown for Seafang and gives you ability uses for Seafang in battle. And then global recruitment duration -2 for all units in his army and replenishment in foreign territory. So that means Wulfrik has a far more dynamic campaign, a lot more choice, a lot more options in terms of how he is approaching his campaign situation in Immortal Empires. But that's not the end of it either. Because after a couple of turns in your campaign, or maybe after you defeat the New World colonies, you will get this event, which will grant you vision over certain regions, depend on what you choose. So you can either get vision with Marienburg, Kislev, the Mismark Crossing, Bordolo, or the Sea of Chill in Karen Kar. What this does is open up more possibilities for you to use Seafang in your campaign. My recommendation would be to go to Kislev, because that way you can probably reach Trog and confederate him and get access to him as a legendary lord, which would of course be incredibly beneficial. Something else to also point out about Wulfrik is that the Isthmus coast, each settlement here has a port in it. So that means even with altar settlements, and I have chosen to go with one for Slaanesh in order to use, in order to get an extra control and growth benefit, but that means you can get the extra growth from the port right there. So that is a nice solid benefit that Wulfrik does have access to in his campaign. It opens up just more possibilities in the campaign for him to use. And yes, you would have to go through Azazel, you would have to go through here, but really getting access to Trog could be just as simple as teleporting to Castle Alexandrinov, then going for the Bay of Blades, and then marching north to confront Trog. Maybe. Or you could go through Kislev, vassalize Frot, and then encounter Trog as he is preparing to deal with Malachi McCason. In this case, he's actually at the Monolith of Flesh. I would recommend getting at least some Chaos Warriors of Slaanesh. All you need to do is get this monument to tier 2, and then you'll be able to get some Chaos Warriors of Slaanesh. Slaanesh is the recommendation because of the extra growth that it does provide you through that maraudering diktat, as it pretty much is. You can also get a Fimir Noble through Skeggy fairly quickly, then abandon the structure, and then just start recruiting trolls. Norscan trolls and Norscan ice trolls in order to confront Trog, and just in general confront everyone that might stand in your way. So it is a bit more of a limited campaign start, but the mobility certainly is great. Though it should be pointed out very, very clearly that much of this mobility is tied to Wulfrik himself, and that you can get access to these benefits even if you confederate him as Trog. And, well, suffice to say, a couple of casualty replenishment income from sacking settlements on Wulfrik and a 2-turn cooldown on Seafang may not necessarily be worth it the most, especially compared to what Trog can offer. But that's my perspective. Costin signing out. Stay tuned for more.